Welcome back to another episode of ROC Boys Football. Today we are joined by Jacquie Franciulli talking a little Virginia Cavaliers football. Jacquie, thank you for coming on. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on. It's exciting to think that we're only, what, 2.5 months till football season?
Can't come soon enough. I'm very excited, especially for this Virginia football team. What I want to open with is Tony Elliott coming in. What is the fan sentiment like? What's the buzz around the program?
Well, whenever there's a new coaching staff, there's always going to be a little bit of excitement among the
Yeah.
players, among the fans. Tony Ella did a good job of trying to get more fan interaction for the spring game. They had the Wahoo Walk back, where the players walked through some fans, and I think that's helping inject some new fan enthusiasm to the program. So that's been something that fans like this coach that understands that they need the fans to, interact with them and players interact with them. And the players are excited. They're excited to see how this new Virginia looks on the field. So yeah, I think fans just want to get football season started so they can see what a Tony Elliott offense looks like and how much has his defense improved. Because honestly, I think that's the biggest question for Virginia is how much strides did they make on the defensive side of the ball?
That's what we're definitely going to get to because looking at some of those defensive stats from last year, it was pretty ugly. But let's start with a little bit of the positive, and that's Brennan Armstrong coming back to this Virginia Cavaliers offense, and with one of the best wide receiving rooms I think in the ACC, maybe the country. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Dontavian Wicks. I've liked Billy Kemp for a couple of years, and then Keaton Thompson, big number 99. He's also a phenomenal athlete. How's that offense in that wide receiver room gonna look?
Yeah, I think this is probably one of the most underrated offenses if you think about the skilled players available on this Cavaliers offense. I think Brennan Armstrong is not nearly talked enough about. Even last year with his performances on the field, I think people kind of still brushed aside. And I get it to a respect. A lot of people who don't cover UVA day to day might just look at that offensive line and the struggles they're most likely going to have early on and forget they have a good quarterback under center. But like you said, this wide receiver room is very, very talented. Dontavian Wicks and Keaton Thompson were two guys that really kind of stepped up last year. And obviously, Billy Kemp is Mr. Reliable for Virginia. I think what's great for UVA is they get back LaVille Davis after he's been injured. During spring, Malachi Fields actually took some reps with the ones because Davis was still trying to get back to full fitness. Obviously, when you have an injury like Davis had last year. It takes a while for you to get the conditioning back. But again, that means you just add Malachi Fields to the mix too in their wide receiver room. What I really like about this receiver room is that they are so confident in their abilities that they help Brennan Armstrong because Brennan Armstrong can just literally throw the ball in their direction and they will make a play. Dontavian Weeks is proven to
Is
be that type of playmaker, especially in the end zone. And they'll need that when they don't have a guy like Jelani Woods anymore on their roster. They weren't able to add a tight end also in the grad transfer. So they don't have a guy like that, it's hard to it's hard to replace a 6'7" guy like Jelani Woods. So they're gonna need these wide receivers to make those big plays. And I think there's a lot of chemistry between the wide receivers and Brendan Armstrong. I think that wasn't shown a lot the first year they played together in 2020 due to COVID and all the stuff and
Yeah,
restrictions. They couldn't play
absolutely.
together. So last year they were able to establish that chemistry, and it's going to be exciting to see how Tony Elliott and Coach Kitchings kind of uses those guys, especially Keaton Thompson, who can add some skills also to the run game as well. So I'll be interested to see how they incorporate him in the offense.
Yeah, that's actually the next thing I want to ask you about this offense. So we got to like the really exciting part of this Virginia offense is that's the passing game. I mean, one of the best, most explosive offenses, especially through the air last year. The run game leaves a little to be desired. I mean, looking at the stats, I think Brennan Armstrong led the team in carries the last couple of years.
Right.
They don't really, and Wayne T is transferring out, I believe, as well. So there's not like there hasn't been like a consistent traditional run game for the Virginia Cavaliers. Not that they need one to be successful, because that offense was very good kind of without one. How is that run game going to look like this year? You think?
Well, Coach Kitchings and Coach Elliott already said that they don't expect Brendan Armstrong to lead the
Okay,
team in carries like the
gotcha.
last few years. They want to look for more balanced offense. And honestly, you want a more balanced offense because you don't want Brendan Armstrong to get hurt. You
Yeah,
don't want your main offensive weapon to be out for a number of games. You also want to keep defenses honest. So the ability to run the ball, keep yourself on the field will certainly help you against games that are closer. And don't forget, last year against several teams, Virginia struggled in close games because they didn't have the ability to stay on the field. They were great at getting quick touchdowns, but you want to stay on the field when it's a close game and you're leading by a touchdown.
Gotcha.
So there is going to be a position battle at running back.
Okay.
Ronnie Walker was hurt during spring. He was probably having the best spring out of all the running backs. It's unsure when he will be back. He won't be back for fall camp. So it will be probably towards the beginning of the season. So Mike Hollins is a guy you're going to listen to a lot to. Their Miami transfer that just came in as well, and Ahmad Foston. Those are the three guys, and I expect them to be used a lot next year. I think that's been something they focused on. Again, it's what I said in the last time. It's all depends on that O-line. How good is this O-line coming in?
And that's probably the last thing on the offensive side of the ball I wanted to ask you about. It was kind of weird when I'm looking at this Virginia team. A lot of guys who started last year for Virginia now transferring out. I mean, Victor Oluwatimi being the most notable guy going up to Michigan. It was a pretty good offensive line that just kind of lost a lot of the guys, the veteran guys up front. What's that going to look like? What I like to ask people when they come on is how many guys deep do you think they are that they feel strong about having? Is it 7, 8, or is it 9 or 10 guys that they're deep there?
So that's the big question heading into the fall camp. So unfortunately, they only had 8 healthy linemen in the spring.
Okay.
That's including walk-ons. So that was unfortunate for them. So
Yeah.
it was really hard to tell where they are as far as the O-line. They got a good talent who, so last year's O-line, the reason why they were so good was some of them were there maybe the first or second year. Bronco Mendenhall was even in Charlottesville. So they were together 4 or 5 years under Coach 2J. So that's going to be a hard replacement job. He's got to fix it. Like he says he's going to have to do a Mr. Fix It, like he did when his first year at UVA. And, it's going to be hard. That's why everything really hinges on the O-line. Can they run the ball? How much time you're giving Brennan Armstrong? There's some guys there that have experience just from being behind Olu and being behind, Nelson. There's all those guys, I expect Noah Josie to be a big part. I expect Derek Devine, who missed the spring game because he was hurt out of precaution. He should be fine. I expect Jonathan Leach, who also was hurt last fall, so he couldn't really participate a lot, but I expect him to really be part of this O-line. So right now, I would probably say they have maybe 6 that they might be comfortable in right now. And then they also have John Paul Flores, a grad transfer coming in. He actually should be on grounds right now. So John Paul Flores will be another name to watch as well. So he will help with that experience. But again, it's not just experience. You got to gel. You got to make sure your timing's right and all that stuff. So fall camp is going to be crucial for them.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest question I see for that Virginia offense coming in because Armstrong's got it. Those wide receivers are super talented. Can we protect Armstrong? And you said it best. I mean, there's not a tougher college football player in the country than Brennan Armstrong.
No, his high school coach, actually, I did a feature on him last year, and his high school coach said he is a safety in a quarterback's body. So, so he said that's the mentality he's played ever since he was young. He always, he drops his shoulders and goes in for the tackle. He doesn't mind.
As a Wake Forest fan, I've seen a lot of Brennan Armstrong, and I'm a big fan of him. Let's talk a little bit about this defense before we wrap up, just because that was such a struggle. And I think part of it was what you mentioned, when your offense is going so fast, scoring so quickly, and not really staying on the field that long because they don't really run the ball. Kind of like Wake Forest in a way, running so fast, your defense has to play a lot of snaps. You're obviously not going to have like the best defense on the stat sheet. But this defense did struggle a lot. Looking at some numbers, 123rd in the country in yards per attempt, 5.7, 6.63 yards per play, which is 122nd in the country. A defense that struggled a lot, to be frank. What are some guys? Let's start up front that could make some noise for Virginia.
So just a quick note too. That was also Bronco Mendenhall and his staff's first attempt at switching their scheme on defense last year. And I think the big thing also last year, because they were switching their scheme, they didn't have the personnel for it. So it was weird where they were trying to put these guys in the wrong position.
Yeah.
Like for example, Deshaun Perry was one who was playing linebacker, but they recruited him as an edge rusher, and he's more comfortable coming on the outside than playing in space.
Yeah.
And he was struggling and he wasn't having enough reps, which means you don't have that depth that you need in that position. he's going to be playing on the edge now because they switched again the formation. They probably play either 3 or 4-man front. They also like rotating a guy into the bandit position, that defensive end linebacker role, which Chico Bennett will probably take that role. Maybe sometimes Deshaun Perry, like I mentioned. I think Aaron Famui and Jimmy Carter are two guys to keep an eye out too. Ben Smiley is one that's such a versatile guy. He can play inside, he can play outside. I think they'll use him as well. Ola is another guy who he was dealing with an illness during spring, so we didn't get to see so much of him in practice. We saw him a little bit in the spring game, but he's also a name to watch. And they also bringing in reinforcements on. That's something that they made sure to do in the transfer portal. They have a lot of defensive reinforcements. So with those guys, with Paula Keir, Cam Butler, Davis, those 3 guys are going to really add experience and size to the front. So it's going to be interesting to see how they use these weapons that they were able to get on the defensive line, because that was something they knew they didn't have enough depth. So they brought in guys to help with some of the younger guys. But I think Jahmyr Carter is poised to have a breakout season up front. I really do.
I saw him a little in the spring game. He looks like a monster. He looks like he's ready to rock and roll. I did catch a little of the spring game, and he was one of the guys that was jumping out. Obviously, Nick Jackson coming back for Virginia at the linebacker spot, kind of the veteran, 100-plus tackles last year. And then finally, the secondary. Are we feeling decent about that? How's that looking depth-wise?
I think UVA fans should be confident about the secondary, a little better than last year. Something that I heard from practices was the secondary was very good on third down. I think the secondary got a lot of flack last season from a lot of people, and they forget that some of the reasons why the secondary was in bad positions is because the guys up front were in bad positions. I think they don't forget that sometimes, it's not just about the secondary losing, the ball. Sometimes it's about other guys not in their position and they have to scramble. So there was a lot of things going on in that defense, not just the secondary. And I think one thing that I think I like about this staff is they're not afraid to play the younger players. I think one guy that I'm really excited to see is Antonio Clary. He didn't play enough, in my opinion, last year. The former staff really like seniority and experience. So I really like the fact that this staff is not. They're whoever is having a good day and whoever is playing and showing out will get reps. So Antonio Clary is a good guy that I think is going to really impress people. I think Anthony Johnson, obviously, people are familiar with Anthony Johnson. He's a good cornerback that should have some good games. And then William Simpkins is one to watch moving forward. And Ventrell Cypress was injured for most of last year. He's a young guy that I think also is grabbing a lot of the attention from the staff. So I think there's a lot of good athletes on there. I think that's the one thing that the other staff did recruit is a lot of athletes, and they got put on the secondary. So they worked on fundamentals this spring, obviously getting work on those missed tackles. And I think the secondary is going to be better than next year. I'm actually pretty optimistic about the defense going to get better. I mean, you can't get worse. So I mean, I think they are going to get better. I just feel like there's more confidence and more of an edge to the defense. I moved on to the beat last year, and it didn't feel like there was that edge to that defense. I think a lot of players had that edge, but it wasn't like a unit edge. But seeing them during the spring, it feels like there's a little more of a confidence into the defense this season.
You mentioned a lot of names that you're excited to see kind of take the field, so that speaks well to how you feel about their depth. One other thing I'll note, and then we'll kind of wrap up. They looked good in the spring game. Like the defense, like if you would have told me the offense was struggling and the defense actually looked pretty good, they look sticky. So that is something to look forward to. And like you said, if the Virginia defense can just take a couple steps up, this team should be winning a few more games. Let's wrap up with just season outlook. Tony Elliott's first year. What do you think would be reasonable, solid expectations for this new regime coming into year one?
I think for sure they need to make a good bowl game.
Yep.
I think that's definitely that's almost absolute and it needs to happen. I think they need to get big wins against rivals UNC and Virginia Tech. I honestly think that's what the fans keep circling in their calendars. If you look at UVA's schedule, that last half is killer.
Yeah.
If you look at that schedule. So they need almost to be perfect in the first couple of games, which, they do have a couple of tests early on, and they have a couple of midweek games, which is going to be a struggle just with scheduling. And but yeah, I think the they need to have almost a perfect start in order to have a good season for Tony Elliott. He needs to build momentum. That's the key.
Yeah.
If you want to go up against Virginia Tech and their in-state recruiting, and you don't have a good momentum in your first season, you're kind of having to struggle from behind. They're already trying to struggle the 23 class because obviously a lot of the coaches only got on grounds until January. So if you want any momentum in the 24, 25 classes, you have to start up quick in the fall. So it's I think they have the capabilities to get to a bowl game. I could see them winning 6-7 games, like just off the top of my head. It could be an 8-win season. It really depends on the O-line. This O-line will really determine how far this team can go.
Yep, that's kind of what it seems like to me as well, because that offense looks poised to have another really, really good year. Jacquie, I appreciate you coming on. If you guys are fans of Virginia sports, go check her work out at Wahoo 24/7 Sports. She does a great job. I appreciate you coming on, and we'll talk to y'all later.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me.
See ya.